Good morning, everyone. Jude is joining us for our book today. We'll see if how long her attention holds. All right, so you guys did a fantastic job. Oh, there she goes. Bye, Jude. All right, so you guys did a fantastic job of answering questions and sending me your thoughts on what the old lady had done. And she hung Edward from the vegetable garden like a scarecrow, nailed his ears to a wooden pole, and spread his arms out as if he were flying. You guys did a great job of answering that. And then the crows were very insistent. They flew around Edward/Clyde, and they picked at his clothes. And why did you think that at this point he was done caring? You guys had some very thoughtful answers on that. And that he started to have feelings towards people, and then he would leave. And he just felt so upset about that he always had to leave, and he never got to say goodbye. So then today you are going to look at, sorry, I had the wrong page there. Today you guys are going to look at describing the conversation that Edward has with the stars. And then if you had a conversation with the stars, what would it be about? And then what caused Edward to have feelings of joy? And then your writing prompt today is good readers make connections to what they're reading to their own lives. And when Edward is hanging like a scarecrow and watching the crows fly around him, he wishes that he could fly. He thinks if he could fly, he wouldn't have fallen into the ocean. And we know that was really a long period of time that he was in the ocean. So they want you to explain in a couple of sentences how your life would change if you had wings and you could fly. All right, so here is chapter 17. So it says, Bryce said, I've got to read around my phone, said the old woman, "Get away from that rabbit. I ain't paying you to stand and stare." "Yes, ma'am," said Bryce. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand and continued to look up at Edward. The boy's eyes were brown with flecks of gold shining in them. "Hey," he whispered to Edward. A crow settled on Edward's head, and the boy flapped his arms and shouted, "Go on, git!" And the bird spread his wings and flew away. "Bryce," shouted the old woman. "Ma'am," said Bryce, "get away from that rabbit. Do your work. I ain't gonna say it again." "Yes, ma'am," said Bryce, and he wiped his hand across his nose. "I'll be back to get you," he said to Edward. The rabbit spent the day hanging by his ears, baking in the hot sun, watching the old woman and Bryce weed and hoe the garden, and whenever the woman wasn't looking, Bryce raised his hand and he waved. The bird circled over Edward's head, laughing at him. What was it like to have wings, Edward wondered. If he had wings, when he had been tossed overboard, he would not have sunk to the bottom of the sea. Instead, he would have flown in the opposite direction, up into the deep, bright blue sky. And when Lolly took him to the dump, he would have flown out of the garbage and followed her and landed on her, holding on with his claws. And on the train, when the man kicked him, Edward would not have fallen to the ground. Instead, he would have risen up and sat on top of the train and laughed at the man. Caw, caw, caw. Late in the afternoon, Bryce and the old lady left the field. Bryce winked at Edward as he walked past him. One of the crows lighted on Edward's shoulder and tapped with his beak on Edward's china face, reminding the rabbit with each tap that he had no wings. That not only could he not fly, he could not move on his own at all, in any way. Dusk descended over the field, and then came true dark. A whippoorwill sang out over and again. Whippoorwill, whippoorwill. It was the saddest sound Edward had ever heard. And then came another song, the hum of a harmonica. Bryce stepped out of the shadows. "Hey," he said to Edward, and he wiped his nose with the back of his hand. and then played another bit of song on his harmonica. I bet you didn't think I'd come back, but here I am. I come to save you. Too late, thought Edward as Bryce climbed the pole and worked at the wires that were tied around his wrists. I am nothing but a hollow rabbit. Too late, thought Edward as Bryce pulled the nails out of his ears. I am only a doll made of china. But when the last nail was out and he fell forward into Bryce's arms, the rabbit felt a rush of relief, and the feeling of relief was followed by one of joy. Perhaps, he thought, it's not too late after all for me to be saved. So remember today, you guys are looking at describing the conversation that Edward had with the stars. You're thinking about if you had a conversation with the stars, what would it be about? And you can draw a gorgeous picture and, do some thought bubbles, be creative. And then what caused Edward to finally have some feelings of joy? Because seriously, he has gone through a lot lately. And then you're making a connection. So think about if he could fly, he wouldn't have fallen into the ocean. And you're going to explain in a couple sentences how your life would change if you had wings and you could fly, which sounds like a really cool superpower to have. All right, so I will let you guys get started, and I hope to hear from you soon. Take care and have a lovely day. Miss you all.